Hey, welcome back to the Too Fast channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do a Corvette style or a donut style taillight modification on a 2008 Volkswagen EOS. Now this is a common modification that's done on Jettas and Passats and GTIs. On some of these cars, you can make this modification directly through VCDS. On this EOS, this 2008 EOS, you cannot do this modification through VCDS. You have to physically either cut a wire or remove a wire out of each taillight. And what that will do is it will turn off the center section of these taillights right here. Normally, the parking light includes this outer ring and this inner section. So how this light functions once you remove a wire, cut a wire. This is the parking light. The turn signal light is the same outer ring and it flashes with a brighter illumination. And your brake light is this section. So it's a very easy modification to do to get this type of look on your Volkswagen EOS. Now, one thing I should mention, one caveat to this is after you do this modification, you're going to end up with a bulb out light indicator on your dash. As of the making of this video, I have not been able to turn that off through VCDS. So I'm still investigating that, but at this point in time, I'm going to have to live with the bulb out light on the dash until I can come up with a fix for it. So if having that bulb out light illuminated in your cluster is going to be a problem, then don't do this mod. Now, some vehicles don't have that particular issue. So I know some of the older Jettas, if you do this mod on the Jetta, you do not have a bulb out light on the dash. There's way too many variables. Too many different cars, different years, different generations. It's just very difficult to say what's going to happen on your car. You could have a 2009 EOS and you may not have any of these problems. So anyway, let's get on with, let me show you how to remove the light and we'll get to the modification. All right, the first thing we're going to do is remove this black plastic trim piece right here. And the easiest way to do that is to use a plastic pry tool. I've already removed this, but you would stick it down here. This is just kind of set in there. You would stick it down right in here and pry up on it until it pops loose, and then you can lift the entire thing out. So this is the spot where you want to start from for removing this plastic trim piece. Now we've got a couple of bolts behind this interior trim panel, and we have a Torx right here, and that Torx would be a T20. Sorry, I'm trying to do this while I'm holding my B camera. So there's one that we need to remove. And this panel over here, I actually have a little screw right here. You wouldn't have one of these. This panel needs to be pulled back a little bit. And you've got a bolt here and a bolt right there. So you've got two bolts, and I believe it's a 16 millimeter. And in a pinch, I believe you can use a 5/8, which is what I have right here. And I actually can't do this holding the camera, so I'm going to go ahead and take out these two bolts and remove the taillight, and we'll be right back. All right, once you got those bolts out, there's a wire harness here you need to disconnect. And you can see there's a light blue piece right here. You actually would put your thumb on it and it's spring loaded. You would slide this back and then you can pull out this part of the plug. So that's all there is to removing the tail light. The tail light, after you get the bolts out, more or less just slide right out and then pull your wire harness. And that's all there is to taking out the tail light. So we'll go ahead and take this over to the workbench and I'll show you what we need to do. Okay, we've transitioned over to my workbench here, and we've got the tail light here on a solid surface. Now what we're going to be looking at is our LED assembly is behind this door right here. We're going to remove this. Now these are actually parking lights that are on the side of the tail light. There's a brown and black wire that goes from here, wraps all the way around, goes inside, and goes into this wire harness. And if we take a look at the wire harness, you see we got a red, a yellow, 2 blacks, and 2 browns. Now these 2 blacks and these 2 browns right here both connect to a single wire inside the car. So when this is plugged in, the signal to the black and the brown, you've got a black and brown that goes inside to the circuit board, and you have a black and brown that goes over here to this secondary parking light. Now I've I've done some research on other people that have done this type of similar mod on Jettas. Not quite the same as an EOS, but according to the people that have done this on the Jetta, which has a similar configuration, you have to cut the black wire going to the internal and cut the black wire going to the side parking light. Now on my particular car, you don't have to do that. Once we disconnect one black wire, this will no longer function. And on that same note, the information I was referencing, basically these people were going in and cutting these wires. And the reason I don't like the cut factory wires if I can avoid it, also I wasn't sure that what was applicable on the Jetta would be applicable on the EOS. So I didn't want to go and cut wires and then find out that that didn't work and try to patch it back together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off this back panel and remove the LED, and we're going to remove the wire from the plug, which is a reversible modification. It's not as permanent as making a cut. So you have to pardon me, I'm trying to hold the camera while I do this. We're going to be using this is a T10 Torx. There's 3 screws on this back cover that we're going to be removing. We do not need to remove this side marker piece at all. I did remove that when I did the other tail light because I was experimenting. All right, so those 3 screws are out. Now these screws have these little plastic washers. Now they're stuck in the holes. Sometimes they'll come out with the screws, but keep in mind these little plastic washers are in there. None of them came off with the screws. So I'm going to be real careful about this so I don't lose those. Also, this rear marker here, the wires go up and are tucked into the channels on this door. And you will want to remove those. We'll tuck them back in when we put this back together, but we're going to remove them temporarily. Remove this door. plug will just slide over, and we'll set this door out of the way, being careful not to lose our little rubber, our little plastic grommets. So you can see how this wiring harness works here. Like I previously mentioned, you've got the a black and a brown that splits off and goes over to this, and then you got a black and a brown that goes over here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the black wire from this plug right here. And the easiest way to do that is to remove this LED panel. So all we really need to do here, because we can't really remove this plug with this installed, there's a plastic clip right here and right here. So there's a couple little plastic clips, and we can use our plastic pry bar just to kind of pry up. Be careful. And that's all there is to removing that. And you can see that's our LED panel. Now, this is a good time for you to inspect this for any type of corrosion, burned out LEDs, etc. My left side tail light, the one I've already did, that one has 2 LEDs that are burned out, and there was some corrosion down here, which I cleaned up. This one doesn't appear to have any corrosion on it at all, but I will, inspect this a little bit closer underneath the magnifying glass. So what we need to do at this point, once we have this popped out, we can just slide that connector off, and we can take this circuit board and we can go and set that aside, put that in a safe place. And what we're going to do here is we are going to pop this little cover off right here, and we're just going to remove the black wire and pop the cover back on. So if I decide to reverse this procedure, I can basically take the light out, take this all apart, pop this cover off, put the black wire back in and put it back on, and no one will ever know that I've made any modifications, because it's not permanent. So I do need both hands to pry this off. I'm going to use a little pick, so I'll come back and I'll show you what that looks like when I get it pried off. All right, once we pop the cover off, you can see it's just a matter of pulling out the wire, and then we'll put this little cover back on. Get that in frame there for you. And that little cover holds those wires into the connector there. So again, I can't really pull this wire out while I'm holding the camera, so I'm going to pull it out and we'll come back and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so this is what the wire looks like. It just pops right out. So we're going to pop this out, and we're going to put that cover back on and reassemble this. And I'm going to tape this into a safe spot, and we'll come back and we'll show you what I did. Okay, so what I did with the black wire was I just used a piece of electrical tape, and it's taped to the back of this LED circuit board. We plugged the main power harness back in. Now, when you put the LED circuit board back in, it only goes in one way. You'll see there's a little plastic pin here, and there's a plastic pin there. These have to line up so this board will go in correctly. There's the little spring clip there and a little clip there. Make sure you don't break those. And then, of course, these wires over here, there's a little rubber grommet. Make sure that that's put in place. So once we've done this, we can go ahead and put the door back on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll go test the light before I actually install it with all the bolts. Okay, when you're putting this door back on, the 3 Torx bolts that we took out. Make sure that the holes on this back cover line up correctly with the 3 threaded holes, and make sure your rubber grommet over here is in place. And then you're going to want to tuck these wires back into the clip here and the clip there, and then put the 3 Torx bolts back in, and then you'll be ready to go and test your light. So I'm going to finish this up and we'll head back over to the car and we'll test it to make sure everything's working correctly. So the reinstallation of the tail light is pretty much the same as we're going to run the same procedure that we did to take it apart. The one thing I should make a note of is you see this tab right here. This tab right here needs to slide over this tab right here, and if you're not careful, it'll ride on top of this and the tail light will stick out. So just be careful when you slide this in. You make sure you get that tab aligned. Once you get that tab aligned and part way on there, then you should be able to get the 2 bolts into this hole and this hole. It can be kind of tricky to maneuver it, but yeah, just make sure that you've got this properly seated, otherwise it's going to stick out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this back in here and plug it in, and we'll give it a quick test.